Sorry to keep you waiting. I think the best way to get attention is to come in little late. Indian tradition. But you know, thank you so much for taking our time, all of you, to be here this morning. And I think the only person on the stage who is not a finance person is me, right? And I was feeling little scared to be in the company of all CFOs until I realized कि यार डरने की कोई बात नहीं, क्वेश्चन तो मैं ही पूछ रहा हूँ, ठीक है ना? So uh, you know, we've just had a beautiful discussion. I was listening to when Hoshi was interacting with all the people there on the stage, and it was a very interesting topic about, the CEOs and CFOs working together. And whenever we are building an organization, whether we are kickstarting a new venture, kickstarting a new concept for an established organization, the vision of the CEO is taken into account, the promoter's vision, and we realize that the role of CFO becomes imperative when we start executing that vision, right? So, Akshayji, I'm going to be asking you, how does the vision of a CFO really align with the business vision that the promoter or the CEO has established for that organization?
Sure. I'll give a slightly different perspective because I come from the lending world. So by design, the perspective and the visions are normally more aligned than, let's say, any other industry because money is raw material for us. So when you want to launch a product or you want to start something, everything from source of funds, cost of funds, the end of the day, the bottom line that comes is very closely aligned, right? So whenever we are launching something new, we are pretty much hand in glove from day one because imperative है कि source of funds कहाँ से आ रहे हैं, cost क्या है, तो what is the product I can play in by design, right? So if you are a AAA rated organization doing really well, suddenly your margins are bigger, you can play in a whole range and you can afford to take maybe a little more risk. If you're a fintech startup like us, it's slightly higher, which means you're by design going to start off in certain segments that are not necessarily the best. So one of the I think most important things that we tend to do when we sit down is there is inevitably an alignment on what the organization has to do. Now, I think one of the discussions in the earlier panel was the paths might differ, right? Inherently, as CFOs will be like, yaar, thoda dheere chalte hain, fir we will accelerate. And everyone will be like, nahi, day one pe hi dikhana hai that we can do it. Fortunately, in the lending world, again, it's a little bit more aligned because on day one, you cannot just accelerate. It'll take some time for you to get wherever you want to get. So in the organization where I've been working for 7.5 years now, this alignment has been very close and it has been very real simply because the nature of the industry I'm in is forcing it. But I would be very surprised if it's very different in any other industry because at the end of the day, if there is a misalignment in the vision of the organization, the CFO will never be able to, support that in whatever ways and means he needs to do it. So I think there is a bit of alignment. Methodologies might differ, but I think the earlier panel covered this topic in a very interesting manner when they said, look, end of the day, the CEO, founder, promoter should have that trust. यार ये मेरे भलाई या company के भलाई के लिए बोल रहा है. He doesn't have an agenda of going slow because slow, okay, no one's really going to win at the end of the day. So I think that ends up playing out quite naturally, I think.
Nikhilji, when we look at the promoter, they work, I think, more closely with the CFO because it's at the end of the day, the CFO is taking care of their money. But when it comes to employed CEOs, they have a target to achieve, they have a deliverable that they have in their mind about getting the top line, building the business, getting the numbers, etc. And they also understand that while they need to work very closely with the CFO, but the CFO's role comes with a lot of responsibilities. For example, ensuring that the risk is being mitigated, the money comes from the right sources, the cash flow is maintained. Now, how does a CFO manage the ROI as well as balance it with the risk management, So what is the critical role of the CFO with this aspect?
Well, that's a difficult job, but you should know how to kind of do it. So the way I define risk is random initiatives sans knowledge. Okay, so if you do any initiative without knowledge, it's a risk. And then it's a business, it may be anything else. So risk is not restricted to forex or commodity or something. When it comes to CFO, people think of risk as something to do with hedging. I don't think the world is that limited. Risk is a much larger thing, and it is all pervasive. It's there in the business all through and through. So we should be, as a CFO, the advantage that we have is we have a 360-degree view of what's happening in the business, and you should at the same time have a 360-degree view of what's happening around in the world. Because that's very important for us to kind of see where the business is headed and where we have to pull the reins and where we have to let go. That is very, very important, because if your CEO and if your colleagues on the business side don't think big, the company is not going to grow. So the job of a CFO is not to kind of restrict growth. It is to how to you are going to support growth. And that's where risk management becomes very important. It may be in your day-to-day business, if you go out and do a 500 crore investment without evaluating the returns, it's a risk. But if you do a planning, you know what investments are going to be there, you know what kind of returns are going to be there, you have a business plan in place, you have a business plan which is tempered and not kite flying on Excel. That's the risk management that you have to do. And when you do that, you have to do it with justification. It's not good to go to a CEO or any business partner and say that it looks all, too rosy. You can go with a supporting, go with an analysis, sit with them, try to see and how to make it work. I think that's the approach of risk management. So it should not be just stopping people in their steps. That would not be a right thing to do, and not for CFO for sure. But if you do that, it's not going to be long term for the company. So in my view, risk management is all about understanding business, understanding where you are headed, tempering down where we feel that people are probably going overboard on making any projections, and seeing the realistic picture, supporting them do it. At times it is possible that money may be a constraint, cash is always a constraint, cash is finally the king. We have to see how we can have horses for courses. Something may require a special type of funding, you should be able to get it. That's the risk management which we will have to do. So every time it may not be a debt capital, because you may not be able to service debt. So that's the planning which you have to do in that case. So that's the role of a CFO. The role of a CFO is to find a solution and not to be a hurdle. So when you have to find a solution, we have to be ensuring that it's working in the right way for everything, and the stakeholders are not losing anywhere. So that's the most critical part of any risk management, and that's the way I would look at business or do any risk management for them.
So in this role, how do you support the growth?
Yeah, so as I said, suppose there is a business, absolutely new business that you are entering into. The job is to see how you are going to, I will just say that I will tell the business partner, let's take this new venture which you are doing to any private equity guy or any, say, outside equity investor, to see whether he can put in a certain stake into this. Now, why is that important? That is important because people inside can be biased. And I, as a CFO, may also be biased to say that no, don't take this risk. If someone else is also willing to take a risk, or someone else also buys into your business plan, that's that much of a support that someone else also believes in your plan. It's a way of risk management. So it can be done in a different ways. Therefore, I said it's horses for courses. Somewhere you may need that you have to take a call. Somewhere, if it's an absolutely new thing that you are doing, let someone else also who understands that business come in along with us. So it's a different thing that you have to do for each type of initiative.
That's a very progressive thought process. Praveenji, how does a CFO, we're talking of new projects, usko evaluate kaise karna hai, feasibility, viability, etc. How does a CFO evaluate investment opportunities and make decisions of capital allocation to maximize the wealth creation as well as for the shareholders?
Yeah, I'm just taking forward where that my colleague has left. Like CFO's role, he has defined how to take the risk and all. So, for any new investment opportunity, CFO has to make a balance between the accelerator and brake. So you know that how to drive the car and where to you have to put your accelerator and then brake. So likewise in the investment case, you have to see the fund position, the cash flow position, how much surplus fund you are having so that you can invest it, what is the return kind of a thing that you will be getting, how it is going to create the value creation of the total overall shareholder, or maybe how the board can take the perseveration of that. And if you have to borrow the fund and you see that down the line your cash flow is not getting positive and you are in negative, how you are going to repay the debt and other things. So there are various scenarios. If you are a manufacturing concern, then it become more of a challenge. What is the gestation period that you have to factor in, and whether the investment is going to give a return in a defined period, if at all. If not, what are the other regulatory challenges is going to happen and other things? Because we have seen that in automobile sector, the old-fashioned automobile sector who has invested heavily, now they are not into profitability kind of a things. It's going haywire because electric has come. Likewise, in the huge power plant, the coal-based power plant, they are also seeing that same kind of a thing because the world is moving towards the renewable energy, which are heavy capital intensive. So those kind of a parameter one has to see that how it's going to create the value. Whether you have a long-term vision, like in case of power plant, whether they have a long-term power PPA signed with the government, so that you are kind of sure and certain that yeah, my 5 years, 6 years power, whatever the my production is going has already tapped. So those kind of a things, various parameter one has to see as a CFO, has to see that whether the investment where whatever we are making is going to give a return. It's in the case of a major investment, or from the system improvement perspective, if you see that you are going to invest something on a digitalization or something into technology, and if your the certain process or certain things are the efficiency improved, and your supply chain efficiency is improved, your cost of capital is getting improved, so that investment is relevant.
Great.
Just
Yeah.
one point to add over here, something to link capital allocation with risk also. The other important point is when to pull the plug. Okay, so because for capital allocation, what is also important is to evaluate your investments on a without having emotions attached to it. You know, there are many a times that the companies keep on investing and throwing good money after bad. That's probably a risk management which also you have to play, where you should know when to call it stop, and stop loss has to be there. And you have to, otherwise if you don't do that, you will continue investing somewhere where you'll keep burning cash.
I think that's a very, very important point that you brought up, because most founders are so married to that concept which has been in their mind because it is typically their baby, and they're not, willing to accept that, it is not working. And then we also have mentors who keep telling them, business is not bad, it's the way that we're doing business, and we want to continue, redo it in a very different manner. Sorry for that. So Akshay ji, when we're talking about the role of a CFO, there are certain roles in an organization which are very visible KPIs, very visible metrics of success. What is the metric of success for a CFO's role? In fact, let me have Pratik.
You can start. Uh, so in terms of KPIs, the way I would look at, let's take the example of a typical manufacturing company, right? While sales, obviously, the growth in sales is one of the top line items which comes to everyone's mind, including the CEO. Going back to our previous question, uh, from a CFO perspective and from an investor relationships perspective, right? Because you also need to look at, let's say, if you are funded by private equities, you need to also look at return metrics from their perspective, institutional capital perspective. Going from sales to the obviously the contribution margins at various levels, unit economics, needless to say, are extremely important, and it has been widely accepted now. Probably was not that widely focused upon earlier. Yeah. So unit economics being the first one, and that's where you establish that your product, is something which with scale will make sense for the business, or these products make sense, these products do not make sense. You know, from there on, you look at the overall, org OPEX efficiency of the org. So in a lending example, which Akshay gave, or for that example, for that matter, I am from also a lending background. We measure a cost to income ratio, which is essentially the higher your loan book, the cost will not increase proportionately, because many of these costs are fixed in nature or semi-fixed. So that's where the scale efficiencies come in. Similarly, for a manufacturing plant, if you add just one other machinery in the same plant, typically the increase in cost is not that much, but the incremental revenue is a lot higher, right? So that incremental concept is very helpful from the analysis perspective, right? If you're putting a fresh investment, whether that is increasing or not. Then the third thing comes in is, and probably the most important is ROE, at least from my perspective. What is the return on the equity which a business is deploying, right? And there are various levers you can use to unlock that ROE. There is, for example, there could be non-productive capital which is locked in somewhere. Let's say a manufacturing company is carrying 3 months of receivables, and because of that, they are not able to churn the sales cycle beyond a certain number of times in a year. If those 3 months are taken off their balance sheet by a supply chain finance provider, then suddenly the churn, because on day one the manufacturing company gets the capital. We've seen what happened in COVID. Distribution partners, SMEs, they all went through tough times, and because of which the companies, the manufacturers had to either take some losses or some locked capital. So unlocking those kind of things and a specialist coming in and replacing them is something which has made a lot of sense for some of our clients. Is what something Mintifee does. And third and last being the overall obviously PAT growth, and some of the other metrics come in handy, for example per employee metrics and all that, depending on which sector you are in. But net these are the key ones which I would like to.
Just to kind of pick on that, I think, it's a function of time. We're living in a world today where profitability is suddenly everything, right? 15 months ago, this wasn't the music that was playing outside. But I think it's very important to have KPIs relevant to the stage of the organization you're in and the kind of capital that you're raising. So if you're an early stage kind of organization, because in the startup world, that's where we all come from, is you're trying to find product market fit, you're trying to find adaptability, you're trying to find users who like your product. Abhi, in that stage, you suddenly come up and say, "Mujhe profitability dikhao," it's not going to happen, right? So you have to be a little pragmatic on the KPIs evolve in your organization depending on which stage you are, who are the kind of investors you're coming. So I think it's that balance is very nuanced, and it's important to have, because there's no point having a CFO who from day one in a company saying profitability. It's not going to happen, especially in tech-enabled businesses. It'll take some time. Now, there are debates on what that time length is, different conversation, but I think it's important to have that view of what and when these KPIs are being set up.
Beautifully explained. Nikhilji, when we are in an organization, CFO's role sometimes is seen as a gatekeeper. मतलब परचेज वाला आके बोलता है, कहते हैं यार मैंने तो क्लियर कर दिया, पर वो CFO ने रोक दिया है. मार्केटिंग वाले कहते हैं कि CFO क्लियर नहीं करता. There's a dichotomy in the role that you play with the responsibility versus what the expectation of other departments are. What in your observation has really worked to create that harmony in cross-functional roles?
Okay, the way I would say is that this role is very important. You should have someone who is going to stop people from doing that kind of spending. So if you need to have a good finance department, I will say that you should have, along with a CFO, a very strong controller. And both of them have to be in sync with each other. One has to play a good cop, one has to play a bad cop. So if you are going to do that, you are going to ensure that the controller is going to bring up and highlight all of those things. And the role of a CFO is going to be to moderate, to see what is required for business and what is probably needs to be stopped. It should not be that everything is going to go and going to get allowed. So, but the CFO should not be playing that role, because the CFO has to be someone who people look forward to say that I will get a solution over here. But a controller has to be someone who has to ensure that he pulls the plug everywhere where he feels that it's getting overboard. So that's the balance which you will have to draw. So if you have a very right staffed, I will say, finance department, where you have a strong controller with a CFO, with each one playing his role well and each one understanding each other very well, you will not have these problems.
So anyone who wants to share any
I-
soft skills that are important?
I don't know if I can share soft skills, but I'll tell you what we've done, at least in the last 2 years in our organization. The founders, the CRO, the CPO, the CTO, and the CFO. There are no boundaries between the six of us. Every major decision that is driving the organization, the CRO will challenge me, I will challenge the CTO, we will all challenge the founders. That has kind of helped us solve this problem. It's something that we've noticed. I've been here for 7.5 years. It wasn't there before. It's been there now. Are we 100% accurate? No. But it's a lot better in, I think, us understanding perspectives, right? I think beyond a certain level in organizations, I think it's important that that role ka definition disappears. Because it's very important that you realize that everyone's working towards a common goal. Now, there are perspectives to be taken on board. So the moment you're able to say, okay, CTO understands the importance of an audit, which is probably the single hardest thing to do because they couldn't care less. But the moment he understands why it's important, everyone's life becomes easier, right? And there's less friction in organizations, you end up doing this better. So one thing that we've started doing is once a month we sit down, no agenda meeting on everything in the organization, right? We'll question the founders on, you said something 2 months ago, but now we are saying something else. What is going on over here? The CRO can literally come and say, hey, you're not letting me take more risk on this particular product. To Sir's point earlier, which basically was, I'm the good guy because I'm like, come to me, I'll solve the problem. And then I send my business finance guy saying, make sure the product P&L udhar na zyada nahi fat raha hai. Make sure that is working according to the unit economics you're supposed to hit. That's his job. So we're like, if he's saying, okay, I don't have a problem, but we've agreed to certain thresholds. So I think that working together from the top, when people see that, hey, everyone is on the same board, the teams below follow automatically because now they know if I'm able to convince the business manager that, hey, this small increase in revenue might offset some other cost item which they're seeing coming, then some decisions don't even come up, right? The teams now are like, we can solve this ourselves. I think there's something there. I don't know if we've cracked it, like I said, but I think it's a good start in the direction we're
I think
heading.
what I hear is that when we're talking of this kind of a discussion, there's a lot of inclusivity in terms of at the planning stage itself, so that the CFO is a part of the plan that is getting executed in an organization, and it's brainstorming more than anything else. You know, Pravinji, the role of a CFO is increasingly dependent. It has always been dependent on numbers, Excel sheets, etc. But I come from a healthcare background, and when I look at a hospital, we are looking at three aspects that we need to create access to healthcare. Then we also need to better in terms of quality, and then we also have to make it affordable, right? So it becomes increasingly difficult for a CFO to manage an organization in which there's a responsibility to build the quality and get the best of equipment, invest in it, and at the same time ensure it is affordable. And technology seems to play a very important role in these organizations. What is the role of technology and how it can strengthen the role of CFO in any organization?
See, it's a very, very relevant question, and that these days you know that how the technology is evolving and how far the old school of CFO is now changing into the tech-based CFO. In fact, in my team, there are few of the techie who are in my team and they are doing the finance function kind of a thing. So it's a more of a, when you create more of a data, you create more of a things. So the technology play a vital role. That you have to have dashboard where you can have a clear picture how the organization is running, how your cash flow is getting affected, where is your AP, AR, how much collection. So you have to be a 4C person kind of a thing, not only the past data ko review kar rahe hain, not like that. You have to be forecasted kind of a thought, forecasted kind of a technology you have to embed it in your system where you can predict the things, how the business is going to be after 6 months or after a month or so, how much cash flow, how much cash in hand. So you can plan every step in a better way. So you'll be more risk averse so that you can do your business in that sense. So here the technology play a vital role. We have seen that in old school, we analyze the data after a month, you analyze the sales data. Here, every hour we are analyzing how much the things are going, how the business is moving. So here the technology role, and it's a CFO who plan the things, what are the KPI, what are the parameters. So through technology dashboard, through technology, various metrics you see, various analysis you can done. So the investment in technology is.
I would like to add. I would like to add here. So two things. One is automation-driven efficiency. So we've implemented that in the past, wherein some of the routine tasks, something as simple as macros or VBA in an Excel or some of the other softwares, can really save a lot of bandwidth of the team. So instead of hiring more and more people, the same people can produce a lot more effective and faster work. So that is one, is something which has been helpful. Second is integration of a particular work stream. So at times things are broken. For example, account receivable, for example, you mentioned. Reminders का काम कोई और कर रहा है. You have to liaise with the sales guy. Then invoicing का कुछ और हो रहा है. So at times the channel, the work stream is broken. So if you're able to integrate B2B payments, reminders to the distributors or the debtors, as well as any goods return. For example, at times sales, we all know at the end of the financial year there are some sales which happen, which are known as consignment sales, and the risk of them coming back and all those things, right? So de-risking also, the technology can be used to help de-risk and have some internal controls also, internal audits also, for some of these systemic sort of loopholes.
Sorry, I just add, I know we're out of time, but very quickly. Given, as a fintech lender in India, technology costs are here to stay. It's fundamental to, it's probably one of our biggest line items, right? And the one thing that we've been working on the last 2-3 years very consciously on, that this is here to stay and it's only going to increase, right? Now, what is the best way to optimize this in the P&L and the balance sheet? So we then actually sat down with the auditors very aggressively going like, I'm building continuous software tech for the future. We need to find a way to start capitalizing it and not expensing it. At the end of the day, there are long-term benefits in what these are being built, right? So if we now start breaking this down as build versus buy and the gestation period of a particular product that you're buying, you are constantly evaluating on, okay, how are we tracking this internally so I can justify to the auditor that is there, right? So again, as a consequence of all the brainstorming that we've been doing, is now every build in the organization is tracked effectively, there are time logs against it, and we go to the auditor and go, X number of hours, Y amount of salary amount has gone towards building something, and hence is not an expense, but a capitalization towards the asset I'm building. There were days when you were building plants and you would capitalize it because visible here, like software is an asset. Now I'm all open on a debate on the lifetime of this asset. It might be 2 years, it might be 3 years. It's not going to be 20 years, it's going to be obsolete faster than any hardware asset. But there's merit in looking at tech cost as a true asset the organization is generating and how you can optimize the cost over the lifetime of that. And I think that allows us to debate, the merit of how you spend this money a lot more effectively.
Brilliant. I think that's a very beautiful point that you're making, that there's a mindset shift that is required at the CFO level. The time is up, but before I let you go, I have just one word that I need from you, all of you, what is that one word describes the impact that your role has in your organization?
See, CFO's role, what I believe,
Just one word.
it's a value creation.
Value creation. Awesome. So,
Go-to man.
lovely. I love that. I mean, if a role can be transformed to a go-to man for CFO, I think that's a job well done.
Ensuring cash flows.
Cash flows.
Problem solver.
Problem solver. Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, all of you, for taking our time to be with us today and sharing your thoughts on how we can become better organizers and leaders in our organization. Thank you for accepting us to take 3 minutes more. Thank you.